Hi, Gary, and welcome back to What Made Gary Scary. This is our third episode, so thank you all so much for tuning in. I really do appreciate it. Also, thank you all for your support so much. Like the last episode, y'all really showed out on me. However, I must say, please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel on YouTube. I love the feedback that I got through Facebook. Don't get me wrong. Thank you so much. But I need you all to actually like, comment, and subscribe to this video so it can push it to the algorithm. But thank you. But hey, bakers can't be choosy. All interactions are interactions that I do appreciate. So thank you so much. Also, I want to give a special thanks to Miss Jackie over there at the Crown Point Bakery at the Strack and Van Til. Honey, my moon. And I was craving apple fritters. So I had been going back and forth for about a week trying to find me some apple fritters, but they didn't have any. So I finally ran into Miss Jackie, and she was like, "Girl, just place the order, and I'll have it ready for you." Honey, I did not know such a thing could be done. So me and my big bag placed the order for a half a dozen, and sure enough, the very next day they were sitting there waiting for me. So thank you to Miss Jackie. Also, thank you to Mr. Hess down at the Gary Public Library, right downtown. Thank you so much to Mr. David Hess. He really went through the archives and found the information for the story that we're going to be covering today. There wasn't much information on the internet that I could obtain, and he got the typing on his keyboard, and he definitely pulled out the whole backstory that I will be presenting to you today. So before we get into this story, I want to give a special thanks to our sponsor, DeCoursley Deaf Delivery and Transportation. Thank you so much. Oh my goodness. Thank you. Also, this crew neck is courtesy of my mother. So okay, let's get into this show. Today we will be discussing Dennis Ray Roark. He is also a Gary native. Dennis Ray Roark was born April 12, 1963, to Mr. and Mrs. Vernon Roark Sr. He was the youngest of the 5 Roark children. The family lived in the Black Oak neighborhood of Gary, Indiana. Neighbors reported that the mother and father, however, were no partridge in a pear tree. They were some violent alcoholics. And unfortunately, the father took this out on the mother, thus leading the mother to neglecting the children. And the household was chaotic even on a good day. According to the neighbors. Growing up, Dennick attended Lake Ridge Middle School and then went on to attend Calumet High School. It was during these years that a young Dennis showed signs of quite a severe learning disability, to the point where he struggled in school. He struggled so much, in fact, that he was deemed, now this is what they called it at the time, so there was no spectrum, so he was just labeled as retarded. And this followed him throughout school. The teasing, the curriculum was a little frustrating to him, so he began to act out in ways like, huffing glue and gasoline, just to kind of feel cool or take the edge off of all of the teasing. Or this was his escape, not to mention the abuse of the household and the neglect daily, which is probably a major contribution to why he couldn't excel academically. Perry Hedge, who was a classmate of Roark's, stated that he attended both schools with Roark, Lake Ridge and Calumet, but he remembers that Roark dropped out when they were about 16 years old. During this time is when Roark began experimenting with drugs and alcohol. Like I said, huffing glue and gasoline were his vices of choice. This definitely did nothing to help him academically. So that led to him dropping out. Years later, Perry Hedge and his wife would end up being neighbors to Dennis Roark and his live-in girlfriend, Mary Waggoner. Now, Mary Waggoner was 6 to 7 years Dennis's junior. So this was a bit of an age gap relationship. And she was a high school student at Gavitt High School when she and Dennis began dating. So if she's in high school, let's just say 14, 15, and there's a 6 to 7 year age gap, Dennis was dead wrong from the start. So we're just going to start off there. Dennis was dead wrong from the start. Margaret Kelly, who was the physical education teacher at Gavitt during Mary's time there, stated that Mary didn't like to come to school at all. She was not involved in any extracurricular activities. She wasn't the type of girl to just socialize. She was the type of kid that you could lose in a crowd. Like, she didn't stand out in any particular, nor did she try to. She just blended in with the daily mass of students just trying to get through these awkward years of high school. The Waggoners lived at 1563 West 178th Place in Hammond, Indiana. And the neighbors reported that the Waggoners were just like any other family in the area. A normal family, except for the fact that Mary and her boyfriend would get into these fights. Another neighbor stated that they would frequently hear Dennis shouting at Mary, and often the fights would spill out into the street, like, or into the front yard. The ghetto. I mean, honey, they fighting like cats and dogs so much that this is them neighbors that's just constantly getting into it all the time, to the point where, honey, it's like ringing a doorbell. It's not that uncommon of a thing to happen in the middle of the daytime. A neighbor by the name of Linda Danko, you are going to hear from her a lot. Her and Betty were like this. And this is back when neighbors were an extension of your village. They watched your kids. They, you need to borrow a cup of sugar. You could use their phone. It was the times where you still had a sense of community. But a neighbor by the name of Linda Danko of 1556, 187th Place, so right across the street, says that Mary was a very quiet and a very sweet girl. But when she started dating that Dennis, that's when everything changed. And he lived there on and off during their 3-year tumultuous relationship. When he wasn't at the Waggoners, Dennis and Mary would live together in his mobile home that was located at 6010 West 24th Avenue in Gary's Black Oak neighborhood. So he kept it pretty local. He was a Gary man, and he would dip off to Hammond to see his little boo, his little teenage boo, like, Dennis. Dennis Roark's neighbors in the Black Oak neighborhood described him as a violent man with a drinking habit and no job. So they did not think very highly of him at all. And then, considering the fighting wasn't just at the Waggoner's house, he brought it home too. When they were in the trailer, they would have knockout, drag out fights as well. In addition to his drinking problem and huffing glue, he has now started to smoke marijuana. Margaret Kelly, the same teacher from Gavitt, remembered when Mary had a child and dropped out of school her sophomore year, stating school was just no longer a priority for her. She had other things that she had to focus on, and Dennis was definitely one of them. Like, he was her main priority. He and the baby were her main priority now. Linda Danko. Daughter Rebecca, who was best friends with Mary up until Dennis came into the picture. Even she saw the change coming. She stated that he was the jealous type. He never let her go out anywhere. He never let her do anything. She always had to be with him, or it was going to be a fight. It was going to be an argument. It was going to be a very big problem. Looking back on these events, you can see that these were the seeds that were planted to what was to come. But hindsight being 2020, no one would foresee what would happen just a mere 3 years after them dating. Lisa Roark, Dennis's former sister-in-law, she used to be married to one of Dennis's older brothers. She attested to Dennis threatening to unalive Mary and their infant son during an argument while they were riding somewhere in her car during the summer of 1988. He told Mary if he could not see his son, then nobody could, and he'd unalive them both. He also did not like her mother. Now, you know, Mama Bear is going to protect hers. Like, anytime they have an argument, they have a fight, they have an issue, Mama Bear is ready to welcome her baby back on home because this is a grown man and you are just a teenager. Why, whenceforth did this come? I'm sure Mom felt completely overwhelmed, and I'm sure she was even more overwhelmed when Mary turned up pregnant with her first grandchild, which she loved. She said she loved little Dennis with all her heart and would do anything to protect Mary and Dennis. But this also meant that Big Dennis was going to now forever be a part of their life. So this was impossible for her to completely accept, due to the fact that Dennis was just no good for her daughter as far as she was concerned. So at some point during the time where Dennis and Mary start dating and when Mary becomes pregnant with their first child, Dennis's mother passes away, and this sends him into a little bit of a frenzy, a spiral. Like, I guess all of these unaddressed issues that he's always had with his parents, and then at the passing of his mom, and I don't know what, but Dennis begins to start utilizing booger sugar and the nobody's friend, Hey Ron. Okay, so if y'all can understand what I'm saying, like he's putting the two of them together, and these are having some very adverse effects on him to where he becomes quite volatile. Whereas before, this was just aggression, these little tantrums, these little spats. Now this has become absolutely chaotic. He is now becoming the chaos that he grew up in. In May of 1998, Mary, while pregnant with their second child, fled to Linda Danko's and her friend Rebecca's house. So remember, they're neighbors. She fled to their residence with her son and a bloody nose, courtesy of Dennis. So here she is. She's running with her baby and she's pregnant. Like, I believe she's about 6 months pregnant at this time. And Dennis has busted her nose. So she's running for her life. She gets to Linda's house and they call the police. They give a full report, but we know how this goes with a lot of domestic violence. Some kind of way he ends up remaining in the home. Lisa Roark, his former sister-in-law, attested to him threatening to unalive Mary and their infant son while they were riding in a car one day, basically saying, if I can't see my son, then no one can see my son, and I will unalive the both of you. Excuse me, sir. Okay, we're going to take a moment from our sponsors. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Decorously Deaf Delivery and Transportation is a Black-owned and operated delivery service provider. If you or someone you know is looking for employment in the Northwest Indiana area, please scan the QR code and visit their website to apply and see what opportunities are available. In addition to that, Perry Hedge and his wife, remember his classmate from back in the day? Well, he's married now, so he and his wife actually end up being neighbors to Dennis and Mary while they were living in their mobile home in the Black Oak neighborhood at 6010 West 24th Avenue in Gary. He states that for a while they were at it pretty good. He said that Dennis broke all the windows in the mobile home at one point in time, and it was already in disarray. He said it was a little white rusted little thing. It was only 20 by 40 foot, but one day during one of their spats, he ended up busting out all of the windows to the mobile home. Perry Hedge stated after that, Mary ended up moving out with their son. But Dennis stayed off and on. Well, after this incident, after Mary moves out, she actually sought the help of a battered women's shelter. She pressed charges on Roark once. She had him arrested twice. She pressed the charges on him once, but she could never fully, completely out of the relationship. One, due to the fact that he would threaten her life. He was going to do something to her. He was always going to find her. She would always be his. He was never going to let her go. And two, he was the father of her son, and now she's pregnant again by him, so her unborn child. It was just difficult for her, and in her young mind, she wanted her family to be together, but she just could not deal with his addictions and the way he was treating her and her young children. It was just not gonna go. So after leaving the women's shelter, she moved back in with her mother. Now that she was a young mother of two, she needed to provide some stability for their two young children. After moving back to her mother's house, Linda Danko, the neighbor, said she had to call the Hammond PD on multiple occasions to stop the domestic disputes between Dennis and Mary once she moved back to her mother's house. It did not stop. From time to time, he would come and he would stay with them, just under the guise of he wants his family back, he wants to see his kids, but he would do this all while still using drugs and not having a job. Throughout this whole time, he was never employed. He was never the provider for his family. He was just controlling and out of control. These incidents happen so often that she and Betty improvised like a little alarm system, due to the fact that Mary was usually pregnant, and she was either underage, or once she became age, she was pregnant. Dennis never held down any form of employment. Plus, he was addicted to these substances and wanted to party and drank and huffed, and he was just out of control. So Betty, her mother, was the only one that worked, and from time to time, they wouldn't have a phone or TV. They wouldn't have access to certain things, so they would utilize Linda's. And during these episodes where Mary and Dennis would get to fighting like cats and dogs, Betty would stand at the front porch and flick on and off the front porch light to alert Linda that she needed to call the police. This was something they did so regularly. Linda instantly knew, like, if Dennis is home, if Dennis is around, let me keep my eye on the address, because that light's going to be flickering. And in fact, it flickered quite often. Rebecca Danko would always report to the police what would be happening to her friend. But, like, I don't know if they just didn't believe them because they were women and he was the only male around, or what. But even Rebecca Danko would report to the police, we've all seen it. I have seen him beat her. She's like, I've seen him beat her while pregnant. I even saw him beat her last summer while she was pregnant. He's always beating her and the kids. Police are always being called, but nothing ever gets done. At this point, Rebecca was fed up. She said one time he did get put into the car and they drove off, but then they came right back and nothing was done. This is really heartbreaking because for them to be so young and for her to be going through this, it seemed like the whole community wanted to get her away from Dennis. They like, or at least just see her release herself from his claws. Like, it was just, they really hoped that she was able to make it out of his grasp at some point in time. So at this point, Mary is tired of Dennis. They've been doing this merry-go-round through baby number 1, and now here we are with baby number 2, and nothing is getting better. Things are escalating. His drug abuse is getting worse. The kids only need more things. We only need more Pampers. We only need more food, and you're doing nothing to provide for us. She's tired of him. They were fighting like cats and dogs all of 1988. And it's January of 1989, and Mary is like, look, Rebecca, I'm done with him. I just want to raise my kids. I have my son, and now I got this baby girl. I cannot keep doing this with him. So like, I'm done. So if next time he tries to come over, like, I'm just gonna tell him it's over. We're not gonna be seeing each other anymore. I'm done. And Rebecca was so happy. She was like, oh, thank God. Like, because everybody knew, even Mary knew he was no good for her. She was just so afraid of what he might do if she actually tried to break up with him. Remember, there's a big age gap. You have to understand that there is some grooming that has taken place. Like, what we now know is grooming. Some grooming is taking place. So he got in her head long before he got in her bed. So it would be difficult for her to imagine a life without him, especially now that they have kids together. So we have to give her some grace because she is only 19 at this present time. On the morning of Friday, February 3rd, 1989, Dennis Ray Roark would commit his final act of abuse and destroy his entire life, along with the lives of 4 other people. After staying out all night, partying with friends, Dennis decides to stumble his way back to Betty Waggoner's home, where the mother of his children, Mary, and their 2 children, Dennis and baby Mary Ella, are now residing. He gets there at approximately like sometime after 5 a.m. and he's banging on the door and he's intoxicated. And that is when Mary tells him, hey, you're drunk. And it's like 5 in the morning. My mom is going to be upset. You cannot come in here. Like, you're definitely going to hear what she has to say about this. So he decides, he's like, look, I didn't come here for all that. I'm just here to see you and my kids, and I'm not trying to hear all that. So at this point is where I have to stop, because from this point on, everything we know is now either what was stated by Dennis or what police officers and witnesses can attest to. So at this point, Dennis states that he said he didn't feel like dealing with her mother. Dennis, you at her mama's house. But he said he didn't feel like dealing with her mama. because he drunk and it's 5 a.m. and he just want to see his kids. So she can either come with him or tell her mama he don't want to hear that. So he says that Mary had decided at 5 a.m. in the morning to pack the kids up and go with him. At that point, her mom sees that she's trying to leave, and she grabs a knife and takes their son away from Mary and says that if you try to leave with the kids, that she's going to unalive herself with a knife if he tries to leave with her daughter and her grandkids. She's going to unalive herself. Then she says she turns the knife on him and tries to attack him with the knife, which is where he had no choice but to wrangle the knife away from her. And then he ends up stabbing her with the knife, by her meaning Betty. After which, Mary becomes hysterical and she grabs their son. He says he then tries to go at Mary and he accidentally stabs the son. And then he stabs Mary. And then before leaving, he sees their daughter in the playpen and, oh, I stabbed the little girl and I left. What the baby do? Like, okay, the little boy was an accident, but you went over there. What she do? Was she crying? Don't matter. What the baby do? Damn, Dennis. Jeez. But this is all according to Dennis. He says this is what happened. After he obliterated and completely devoured his entire family, he then sets the house on fire and then proceeds to leave. After he sets the Waggoner's residence on fire with the family inside, he takes off into the middle of the night. Now, this is February 3rd, 1989. It is snowing outside. And William E. Stover is warming up his truck outside of his home, west of Hammond's Woodmar Country Club. So he lives over in that area. And it's about 5:30 a.m. on February 3rd when he sees a 5'11" figure just emerging out of the snow. And it starts knocking on his window. And he takes a moment to lock his car door and he begins to speak to him through the window. And he can see that it's a man. He's wearing a baseball cap, jeans, and a thermal undershirt with a t-shirt on top of it. But the t-shirt is bloodstained. So he talked to him and he goes, "Hey, buddy, you okay?" And Dennis can notice he's looking at his shirt. So Dennis says that, "Oh, he's been shot, and oh, I'm so sorry, I've been shot. Can you take me to Indianapolis Boulevard?" And he was like, "Oh, buddy, like, don't worry about it." He was like, "Just go in the house and I'll call an ambulance and the police. We don't have to go." But Dennis goes, "Oh, no, don't worry about it. I don't want the police or an ambulance to get involved. This is a personal matter." Yeah, sir, getting shot is very personal. As a matter of fact, it's a matter of life and death, and I take that very personally. But, okay, we're going to take a moment from our sponsors. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Decorously Deaf Delivery and Transportation is a Black-owned and operated delivery service provider. If you or someone you know is looking for employment in the Northwest Indiana area, please scan the QR code and visit their website to apply and see what opportunities are available. Alicia's Delicious has a March special that you don't want to miss. For a limited time, her coated strawberries are available in half or full dozen packages, with your choice from 3 delicious flavors. And please, don't miss out on her tres leches. Place your order during the month of March 2026 and turn your occasion into a very special occasion. He begins to walk north of the Woodmar Country Club to I-94. Stover, not being no fool, he then immediately calls the police, who meet at Stover's residence, but they trace his footsteps all the way back to the burning home of Betty Waggoner. The police are like shocked. So when they get to the front door, they can see that there is a figure laying on the floor right by the door. So they drag her out to the front lawn. But as they go back inside, them opening the door has oxygenated the area, and it completely consumes the living room. And the officers unfortunately cannot get any of the other victims in the house out. When firefighters get there, they can see that Mary is crouched on the floor with her son, their charred remains, and the daughter's remains are in the playpen and charred as well. This devastated the Hammond area. This was like, oh my goodness, like, what a tragedy. A mom, a grandmother, and her 2 infant children have passed away in a house fire. How terrible. That was when everybody was wondering, where is Dennis? Around the same time that the firefighters were arriving at the Waggoner residence due to the blaze, a man by the name of William Pollock of Sauk Village, Illinois, stated that he found Roark walking in the snowy median of I-94 around 6 a.m. that morning of February 3rd, and said he looked upset. Pollock said, so I asked him, hey buddy, did your car break down? And he told me he had just seen 4 friends get stabbed. Okay. Of course, Pollock asked him if he had called the police, but here go Dennis again talking about, oh no, it's a personal matter. He didn't want to get the police involved. And shouldn't you be notifying somebody that something had happened? Like, well, if you don't want to call the police, why didn't you call an ambulance? And he just brushed the question off and just told him to drop him off at the nearest truck station. So Pollock said he dropped Roark off at a service station near I-94 in Burr Street in Gary. Minutes later, he found a Gary patrolman by the name of Perry Gordon and alerted him of everything that Dennis Roark had just told him. Pollock said that he and Officer Gordon then returned to the service station and tracked Dennis Roark's footsteps all the way to his former sister-in-law, Lisa Roark's house. They found Roark on the telephone talking to somebody saying, and I quote, "You don't have to worry anymore. I took care of them. They won't bother anybody." Excuse me, sir. Whom are you referring to? And that is where he invites the police officer to shoot him. They don't do it. They take him in and they just want to ask him some questions, okay? After investigating and consulting with the Hammond police on, okay, this is what happened at the house. We already had a phone call come in stating that a man fitting his description showed up saying that he had been shot. Now this man states that the man said he saw some friends get stabbed, and we know for a fact that he was staying at this house that has now just burned down. So we're going to bring him in and we're going to ask him some questions. So after investigating for a short amount of time, they arrest Roark at about 7:15 a.m. at 5100 West 25th Avenue. Roark was at this address, which is in the Black Oak section of the city. So if I was Lisa, I'd have dropped the dime on him. Honey, get away from me with this madness, and don't come sit on my couch smell like no gasoline, honey. We know you be huffing. If I done got rid of your brother, what makes you think that I want to deal with you? Like, this is preposterous. While in questioning, yet again, here we go with another one of these Gary men. He just confesses to everything, but his confession is a little discombobulated. Like he halfway telling the truth and he halfway lying, which makes this so crazy because it's like, boy, pick a side. He starts by telling in his confession that he was going to harm himself that day. He realized that after what he had done, he took a .25 caliber pew pew with him. He said he was going to pew pew himself, but he just couldn't. Now, after you done stabbed everybody in the family, including the babies, now you just can't bring yourself to self-harming. How uncanny. But nevertheless, that's how he starts off his confession. So the officer goes, well, what did you do that made you want to pew pew yourself and, take yourself off of the planet? So he starts off with the first lie, saying that he had come home after having a night out with his friends. They were just hanging and talking. And he comes home and the mom gets all in his face. She comes at him with a knife. He takes the knife away from her and he ends up accidentally unaliving her. And then he, in anger from Mary being angry at him, he then gets angry at her and he unalives her accidentally with the baby. And then the officer goes, accidentally? Okay. But what about the baby in the playpen? Yeah. Officers had already done an emergency autopsy report. And this is where they saw that there was nothing accidental about any of these deaths. It was shown that he had stabbed each victim multiple times. Each victim multiple times, including the 61-year-old Betty Waggoner. 3 of her stab wounds were in her back. So please explain to me how this goes from your girlfriend wanting to leave with you to her getting mad that you've unalived her mother to you accidentally unaliving everybody in the family. Please run that story back again. And you accidentally stabbed them multiple times? No. So he goes, oh, okay. So then he just cracks. He tells them, okay, she was trying to leave me. And I guess I just kind of snapped. Her mom came at me crazy. Granted, her mom did pull the knife on me. And she was telling me that I wasn't going to be able to see my son anymore. And that Mary didn't want me. And Mary was just standing there basically telling me I had to go. He said, if I can't have you, then nobody can. So that's when he unalived her mother. He unalived the baby. Or so what he thought. When he went at Mary, he accidentally unalived the baby. and then he unalived Mary. He said he only stabbed her once though, or so I think. And then right before he left, he saw the baby girl over there, and he says he unalived her just because, and left the knife there, and then he doused the house in gasoline and he left. It was like somebody else was doing it, like the devil himself had possessed him. Deputy Prosecutor John Burke wanted to present evidence, basically charged him with 4 counts of murder, and wanted to seek the death penalty for this incident. However, public defender Alex Wolanski, he represented Roark and questioned his sanity at the time. He stated that Roark was abused as a child. He was mentally retarded, and after years of huffing glue and gasoline and drug abuse, he had basically deteriorated his brain to the point where he could no longer control his emotions. He was no longer responsible for his actions once he got angry, due to the fact that he was already limited. So the prosecutor is not only seeking the death penalty, but he's also seeking charges for the arson on this case. Like, he's throwing everything at him that he can, because he basically feels like this is ridiculous, and it involved not 1 but 2 infant children. The defense attorney is basically saying that Dennis was a lost cause from the start. This was just waiting to happen after years of abuse. He was like a pot that was waiting to boil over. He even brought in a psychiatrist that said that children who live in households that involve not only substance abuse, but addiction, and not only addiction, neglect, they are just boiling pots with a lid that doesn't fit, and it's just waiting to boil over. And after about 26 years of this drug abuse and neglect and abuse, he has now reached his boiling point, and this is the result of all of those years of neglect and abuse that he has endured. We're going to take a moment from our sponsors. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Decorously Deaf Delivery and Transportation is a Black-owned and operated delivery service provider. If you or someone you know is looking for employment in the Northwest Indiana area, please scan the QR code and visit their website to apply and see what opportunities are available. This case was presided over by the Superior Court Judge James L. Clement, and he was lenient, but he wasn't completely going for all of that. But he let the defense make their case, but he definitely allowed the prosecution to make their case as well. But it was all left up to the jury. And after no more than about 2 hours of deliberating, the jury on this case decided that Dennis Ray Roark would be sentenced to death for the murders of Betty Waggoner, Mary Waggoner, Dennis Waggoner, and Mary Elizabeth Waggoner, their 2 children. So yeah, they weren't playing with him. They said, honey, you killed these people. And you were in your right mind. In fact, you were in your right mind enough to know to set the house on fire. You were in your right mind enough to create multiple different scenarios of where you had been and what you had been doing while you were hitchhiking up I-94, scaring the heck out of people in these bloodstained clothes. Oh yeah, you were so in your right mind that Michelle Pleasant of Gary, Indiana, she testified that she spent 6 hours with you the night before. Yeah, when you were out with friends and you were drinking with friends, you was out with your little side chick, Michelle. And you spent 6 hours with her shooting pool, drinking beer, sharing a marijuana cigarette, and driving around. Now, she said that Dennis appeared sober and rational during the whole time, and when he left her home around 5:10 a.m., he was completely fine. He was rational, he was sober. So how is it at 5:10 a.m. while you at your side chick house, you completely rational and sober, but then when you get to your baby mama house shortly after that, and rumor has it she done with you and she not trying to be bothered, now you insane and everybody ends up unalived, and now you out of control and you're no longer responsible for your actions. How is that? And firefighter Fred Rodriguez testified that he entered the blazing Waggoner home at about 6:30 the morning of February 3rd, 1989. So from 5:10 at Michelle's house to 6:30, you had time to unalive everybody and burn the house down and flee down the interstate. Sir, don't you move quickly. Okay, so Roark was convicted of 3 counts of murder and 1 count of voluntary manslaughter, and that was for Betty Waggoner's murder. She was the one that was voluntary manslaughter because he says that she was the provoker. She was the catalyst to this. He says she was the one who wielded the knife. She was the one who lunged at him first. So everything that happened was a result of her trying to attack him, and then him having diminished capacity or low impulse control, virtually no impulse control due to his mental retardation, is what the defense was saying. This is what the defense said back in 89, honey. Please don't get on me. This is what he said, that due to his mental state, he couldn't be held responsible for his lack of impulse control. Honey, them jurors took about 2 hours to come back and say no, and they sentenced that man to the death penalty. So on direct appeal, they stated that they failed to take into account his inability to control himself once provoked. So they retried him, and the sentence stayed. I mean, they still was like, period, poo. We said what we said. He was sentenced in October of 1989. He was sentenced to the death penalty. But on his very last appeal, his sentence was commuted from the death penalty to he got 50 years for each victim. So he ended up having a 200-year sentence. And he now remains in the Indiana State Penitentiary, which is where he still remains to this day. He is no longer on death row, but that is where he will remain for the rest of his life. That is the story of Dennis Ray Roark. Unfortunately, at the age of 26, he took the life of his 19-year-old girlfriend, her 61-year-old mother, their 20-month-old son, and their 4-month-old daughter. This is what a sad case. Let this be a lesson to you. Ladies, leave the first time. Girl, leave the first time, honey. The first, all that, he say my baby's so crazy. He say he gonna kill me and my whole family. He will kill you and your whole family, honey. Don't think for 1 second, and don't think that this is just something that the cream doing, not the wheat, honey. we spaz out too, okay? Thank you all so much for tuning in. I do appreciate all the love and support. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to this video on YouTube. Like. Please run the algorithm up. View it. If you know somebody from Gary, if you used to live in Gary, if your family's from Gary, if you just know a man named Gary, please send this video to him. Once again, thank you to Mr. David Hess from the Gary Public Library. This episode would not be possible without him because there is not much on this gentleman. There is not much on this case, but the fact that he killed his whole family over there, whew, please, honey, may that love never find me, please. And may that love never find you too. Y'all be safe out there. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Thank you to our sponsors, the Corsley Death Delivery and Transportation. Thank you so much. I do appreciate you. Thanks again to Miss Jackie for my apple fritter. Honey, I'm finna go eat. And thank you for tuning in. Thank you. Love you so much. Y'all have a good night. Tita got somewhere to go. Bye.